You are live with Get Connected. Mike and John here in studio. We've got a great program today. Of course, we're always about technology. Later on, we'll be talking about a big privacy fail with the Cadillac Fairview people. In the shopping malls, or one of the shopping malls, they were capturing all kinds of information from people's smartphones and pictures as well.
Unauthorized photos.
Unauthorized photos. We have got the Deputy Privacy Commissioner of Canada to tell us all about it and what they do to help prevent those kinds of things. We'll also be talking about the International Space Station, and people have been living on there for 20 years. That's pretty good.
That's crazy.
We need a moon base, though.
It's coming.
It's coming.
And it'll have 5G.
It will have 5G, courtesy of Nokia. Probably better there than here. Probably be cheaper than Canada.
Probably,
yes.
Yes.
For your cell phone plan on the moon. And we'll be talking with Oliver Lang over at Intelligence City. This is a Canadian company that is using all kinds of technology and new technology in building materials to build the next generation of buildings, like wood buildings that can be like as high as 18 stories.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. Well, this is the time where we talk about the news on our first segment here. Something that really caught my eye, John, because I'm into electric vehicles. You are too. I've got a Tesla. You've got a Kia EV. Chevy, they also make the Chevy Bolt. That's a very popular electric vehicle.
And the Volt.
And the Volt, which is a hybrid.
Yeah.
That's not too confusing.
No.
Bolt and Volt. Anyway, they are going to start selling EV retrofit kits starting in 2021. So if you've got an older vehicle, I'm assuming a Chevy, you would potentially be able to upgrade the motor to an electric motor. So they actually showed a 1975 Blazer retrofitted with an electric motor and a battery pack. And these are all Chevy Bolt parts, I guess, because they've got that system going.
Yeah, and it sounds like they put the battery, which normally is on the sort of the bottom of an EV, in the bed of the truck.
Cool, but that takes up some of the storage room, right?
It does.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also curious though, what would be under the hood?
The electric motor.
Well, but it doesn't take. It's not as big as a full size Blazer motor, though, right? Like,
well, I googled a picture here on Engadget. Our good friend Igor Bonifasic wrote an article about it. It looks like it takes up much of the
maybe
the front, but anyway, I think that's cool. Like if you've got an older car and it's not destined for the scrap heap in your mind, this might be an opportunity to breathe new life into it. The thing we don't know is the price. Like, is this going to be as much as a new car?
Well, and it sounds like it might be fairly invasive installation as well, because they have to rip out all the other stuff.
Yeah.
Rewire everything. But
that can't be cheap.
No, and I also kind of wonder what the range would be like as well, because the Chevy Blazer, at least as depicted in the 1975 version, is not the most aerodynamic vehicle. And we both know that even like our wheel covers are aerodynamic just to get
those extra few miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it's an awesome plan, and I think a lot of people will be interested in that if it's affordable.
Let's move on to the next story. Raspberry Pis, not the kind you eat, but the little computers. We talk about these things all the time because we're nerds.
Yes.
They were first started back in 2009 in the UK by the Raspberry Pi Foundation, and their goal was to get a computer into the hand of every child that wanted one. And so they came up with this really cheap little computer board, I think for around $10 back then.
I think they wanted it to be as like cheap as $5 was the goal.
So, I mean, you've got to add other components to it. You can still get them, I think, for $20-$30, but then you got to add a little case, a power supply, a little memory card, and keyboard, mouse, depending what you want to do with it. But these things are awesome because they're great for the do-it-yourself people. You can make anything with these. I've got one set up in my garage because I got a little tech bench out there. So I've got a monitor and I've got a little Raspberry Pi, and I'm running Linux. So that's kind of it's like Windows.
Yeah.
And I can surf the web, email, I can print from there. I can even play games like Minecraft.
Yeah, and it has like an open source version of Office on it. So
yeah,
there's really nothing it can't do other than maybe run your tax software.
Yeah. But people also do other things. You have RetroPie software going on one of yours to power your arcade machine.
Yep.
I've got one in my home theater system. Sky's the limit. You can make digital cameras out of these things. You can make robots. And now they've got something called the new Raspberry Pi 400. And we're both kind of excited about this because in my garage right now, I've got my Raspberry Pi computer in a little case, about the size of a deck of cards.
Yep.
And got the monitor. I've got a Raspberry Pi keyboard and mouse, but you can use any one. But I like it because it's Raspberry Pi. Well, now they've actually built the computer into the keyboard.
Yeah.
Which is cool.
I mean, it removes the need for this external box.
Yeah.
Makes it all very compact and very inexpensive too.
$100?
Yeah, $100 for the keyboard. With the computer built in, and for I think for $130, CannaKit, our friends in North Van, they sell a kit that comes with the power supply, the micro SD card, the mouse, a little quick start guide, all that kind of stuff. For $130, you have a full-fledged computer. All you need to add is a screen, and the screen can be a TV or a computer monitor.
Anything with an HDMI connection.
Yeah.
And there's 2 ports on the back. You could hook 2 monitors up to this.
Dual screen.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And it's amazingly powerful machine. This is an ARM processor. This is the same processor that Apple's building their platforms on going forward. And it's a very capable processor. This particular one, I think, has about 8 gigs of RAM built in. And, there's a lot you can do. The nice thing about this, you don't have the same overhead as Windows and Mac OS.
Yeah.
So things run much faster. Boot up is almost instantaneous.
Yeah. Just so we're clear, you're not running Call of Duty on this thing.
No.
Like a high-end 3D graphics game or high-end video editing. It's lower powered, but for $100,
yeah. Well, I know my fiance's parents, their computer just died. I'm like, they should get one of these. They just need a browser.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So for $100, I mean, that's what it would cost them to get their old computer fixed.
Okay, we're going to have to take a break. Don't forget to visit our website, giving away a Google Pixel 4 XL this month. GetConnectedMedia.com. When we come back, cities of the future. Stay tuned.
We should put an echo on that.
I know, cities of the future. You are back with Get Connected. Mike and John here. Going to talk about building technology now. This is kind of exciting, some of the new advancements that are happening. And to do that, we have a great guest. His name is Oliver Lang. He is with Intelligent City, a Canadian company based here in Vancouver. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. How are you?
Great.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Tell us about Intelligent City and what you guys are all about and what you're doing.
So, good morning. I'm Oliver Lang. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Intelligent City, and we're an urban housing technology company that is creating a highly scalable and adaptable platform for housing solutions general. We create turnkey housing products for developers, landowners, and housing operators. Really, our general mantra is to build smarter and empower people to live better, and to find ways to transform this industry and move us towards a paradigm where affordability, sustainability, and great urban livability are no longer mutually exclusive. And we believe we're doing this by combining the power and the technologies of Industry 4.0 with renewable resources. So we can get to affordable buildings that can be carbon neutral today. And we're really focusing on the sort of mid to high-rise sector right now, so 4 to 18 stories. And what's, I think, fairly revolutionary about what we're doing is just using really a mass timber platform that is entirely offsite prefabricated using robotics and automation and so forth to get us to that paradigm.
I've got a lot of questions here. This is super interesting. You talked about buildings that are 4 to 18 stories using timber. Like, how is that possible to make an 18-story building out of wood?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we already have one in Vancouver. It stands on the UBC campus called Brock Commons. It was built a few years ago, and it was one of the first the first in North America. It's an 18-story building entirely built from mass timber. There are other projects going up. There's one that's been completed in Vienna. It's 24 stories tall. So the revolution that's really happened there is sort of the invention of something we refer to as a mass timber, or a CLT panel, cross-laminated timber panel that was originally invented in Europe some over 20 years ago. And that really gives you a lot of advantages, where you get the dimensional stability, and fire resistance and structural performance, not dissimilar from a concrete slab, except you can make it all out of timber product. And then the beauty of it is you can actually put it into an offsite fabrication environment, because you can machine those components readily.
So it was invented in Europe. Does it have to be made there, or can it be made here in North America?
No, it can be made here, and it is being made here. We have a couple of CLT manufacturers in British Columbia, and they're with cross-laminated timber and dowel laminated timber. There are 3 that we have in BC alone, and more in Canada and in North America. So there's definitely increasing supply being brought to the market.
I think one of the questions you'll probably get asked, because you're talking about how efficient this is this modular housing, or is it different?
So our system, we're trying to sort of do the best of both worlds. Basically, we refer to it as modular housing because modular housing right now is a term that's being more broadly used as anything that's prefabricated in componentry. Traditionally module was like a large box, to keep it simple, that had a high degree of modularization. But we have found, that's where we started a decade ago, and we manufactured fully prefabricated modules and built buildings with those. But we had found that they are spatially very intensive. You need very large manufacturing plants for those. You have very high cost for shipping, and you ship a lot of air. So we just said, let's do offsite prefabrication, but find a way where we have really integrated componentry, but we can flat pack them as much as possible. So we're doing basically component systems that are prefabricated, but that are highly integrated and already have like electrical installation and ventilation installations and so forth in our components, and fully prefabricated facade panels that meet what we call like passive house performance, so that they get you to buildings that have very, very low cost to operate, because they have essentially almost no heat loss.
This is interesting to me. So I'm no building expert by any stretch, but for these 4 to 18-story buildings, typically it's concrete and rebar. Everything's got to be kind of done on site there. How much does your process speed up construction, or is it the same amount of time?
No, it's significantly. We have our system now designed so that we can do in a mixed-use building. Our system works on the commercial floors and the office floors and the residential floors. So from the ground slab up, everything can be built using our approach. So I would say we typically see anywhere a reduction in construction time of 4 to 8 months, depending on the size and complexity.
And what about costs? Like, how does that compare to traditional building methods?
So cost is an interesting issue. We really look at the life cycle cost of a building, because I think that's something we need to have a conversation with in our industry. We need buildings that perform well, that make people live well in cities, that are sustainable, and so forth. So the true cost of a building needs to include a discussion about its operating expenses, its maintenance costs, its depreciation, its resiliency, its adaptability over time. All these things need to be factored in, because that's the true cost to an operator, somebody like a nonprofit who looks at an affordable housing project. They're very interested in the question, like, how much is this project going to cost over 20 years? And that, because of the level of performance, quality control, efficiency gains through an approach that we have, there's a significant reduction in cost, somewhere between around 30%.
So let's say you've built this building, it's a 10-story building. and 10 years down the road, like how easy is it to renovate different areas of that, like different floors and rooms?
We have designed the building from the beginning to have that sort of resiliency, because we said a building should really last 100 plus years. And we've heard from housing operators that they've found it's very difficult to actually adapt buildings, that sometimes you have buildings that are physically still okay, but they don't meet the demographics needs anymore. And because every single wall is built structurally, you can't convert them, you can't do anything with them. Our system, our platforms for life system, as we call it, has been designed for complete adaptability. So you can change, studio 1-bedroom apartments to 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms. You can change them into office floors if you wanted to. And so you have really great flexibility, because the entire structural system, the way how it's organized, and how the services are distributed, all anticipate the idea of change. And that we said that from the beginning. That's the key thing. We need to have the advantages of prefabrication and consistency on the one side, but adaptability and customization on the other side is critically important to make our customers successful.
Do you have a building up in Vancouver already that you've done?
Yeah, we've done a few buildings, yeah. In Vancouver,
and so these are typically mixed use, like residential and commercial office space?
They're typically mixed use. Yeah, we're really focused on sort of urban densification projects, and so we've designed a system from the beginning that you can do mixed use with residential on the ground, and we have some projects right now with commercial, retail on the ground, and then there can be some office layers in there, and then residential on top.
Yeah, I've had a chance to look at some of the the layouts of these buildings, and they're not just like big block buildings. Like you've really worked hard to have kind of open spaces.
We really have made sure that sort of when we started up a decade ago, we've learned from some projects that we've done previously, and where we really focused very much on the question of livability and well-being in a building, and building really resilient communities, connected communities, that people have proper access to daylight in all of their rooms, that children don't grow up in closets, right? That you have proper windows, you have proper natural cross ventilation in buildings, access to daylight, you have that flexibility, and that you can be a happy owner or tenant in a building, and you're really connected to community. So we build in features like exterior spaces, access to common amenities, shared rooftops, courtyard buildings. All these kind of things are built into the approach and into the platform.
Where are we going to see some intelligent city developments in the future?
Well, we've got a number of really exciting projects on the board right now, some in Vancouver, Victoria, Esquimalt, and so yeah, that's where they're coming right now. And there is this discussion with projects across the border, but that's difficult right now because the border is closed.
Yes, it is. Where can people find out more information about what you guys are up to?
So we have a website. It's it's intelligent-city.com.
Very cool. Thanks for joining us today, Oliver.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
That was Oliver Lang. He's the CEO of Intelligent City, talking all about the latest in building technology and the future of it. When we come back from the break, more tech to talk here on Get Connected. You are back with Get Connected. Mike and John here. Let's talk privacy now. Back a few years ago, Cadillac Fairview, they're the guys that own a lot of the shopping malls here in Canada, got in a lot of trouble for some privacy issues. They were location tracking folks in their malls, I think using the Bluetooth on people's smartphones. Well, they're in hot water again. They have basically been caught collecting over 5 million shoppers' images. They've set up little cameras in those kiosks they have in the malls, and apparently they, through an investigation, found that they didn't let people know about this privacy issue. So on the line, we have a great guest today. His name is Brent Hahman. He is the Deputy Privacy Commissioner here in Canada. Thanks for joining us, Brent.
Thank you.
So what's the problem here?
Well, there's a few problems. So why don't we start at the beginning?
Okay.
When an individual, a passerby in a mall, I think it was the Chinook Center in Calgary, noticed some error messages on one of those Wayfinder kiosks, and those are those kiosks that that you figure out where to go to in a mall, and he shared those images on Reddit, and the images demonstrated that there was some use of facial recognition software. So clearly this came out in the media, and it raised some concerns and questions with respect to the privacy commissioners in Canada and the offices. So ultimately, the Office of Privacy Commissioner of Canada, along with our counterparts in British Columbia and Alberta, commenced a joint investigation into the use of potential use of facial recognition software by Cadillac Fairview. And so here's what we found. Basically, what we found is that in a span of 2 months in 2018, Cadillac Fairview, across 12 malls in Canada, collected the equivalent of 5 million images. And this could be repeat customers, but that's a massive amount of information to be collected in such a short period of time. And not only did they collect these images, and although they deleted them quickly, before they did that, they translated those images into numerical representations or facial arrays, which they would then use in order to inform analysis on foot traffic patterns, or to guess the age and the gender of individuals and of their customers. So the issue here, because you said why does this matter, is that they did this without the knowledge or consent of customers. In
Brent,
fact,
they said they put stickers on their doors telling people.
Yeah, I can share something about those stickers.
Okay.
If you look at those stickers, what they talk about is the use of video surveillance for safety and security purposes, something that many of us are very familiar with when we go about our daily lives. And that is completely different from the use that they were engaged in with this facial recognition software and these cameras that were at the periphery and quite hidden and not apparent. And so, yes, individuals and Canadians would expect and understand that you might use cameras for security and safety purposes, which was identified, but they went further. They used this to conduct video analytics in order to inform demographic projections and foot traffic patterns. So really, they're talking about a collection, and what we're looking at is the collection of biometric information, which is highly sensitive, and it's unique to each individual, okay? And it's stable over time. So this is highly sensitive information that's collected without the knowledge or consent of individuals. So that was one of the big issues that we had.
This is basically taking it sort of where they would go with this information. This is very similar to like Minority Report, where you're walking into the mall and you're advertised based on recognizing who you are, the kinds of things or deals you might want. Sounds cool, but we didn't opt in for this yet.
No. And so I think one of the challenges I have too, if I was reading this investigation properly as well, yes, they did delete the images, but that biometric information you were saying was still stored on a central database by a third party. That sounds like all kinds of trouble to me. Like
it is. And what's more trouble is that Cadillac Fairview was unaware that this information, the facial arrays, was being stored by a third party, one of the third party contractors, on a decommissioned database. And we know by looking in the newspapers about the risks associated with these massive security breaches. Certainly, if this information would have been broken into and falling into the wrong hands, there's many risks that can manifest from that. When you have such biometric information, although Cadillac Fairview did not, and we have no evidence, and they did not use that information in order to identify individuals, that's the type of information that can be matched up with other information, including images online, in order to do such identification. So clearly, there's a lot that can be done with this information. And you had mentioned Minority Report. There was no geolocation tracking of specific individuals with respect to this information. Again, it was used to project demographics and foot patterns. That said, for individuals that were signed into Wi-Fi, there was an ability, if they so chose, to activate the ability to triangulate and deliver location-based ads, but they did not do that. And in fact, what we've said at the end is that take that out of your privacy policy, because it was in there, that this potential. And if you were to engage in that we'd expect you do it with express opt-in consent.
Brent, I'm a tech guy. I love what they're trying to do here, using facial recognition to see, what type of people are in their malls. But it really does come down to privacy, like you were saying, and getting consent from customers. But, how do you get that consent going forward? Like, is it just some little sticker on a door somewhere saying, by coming in the mall, you consent to us, capturing your face? Like, what kind of regulations, like what kind of size, like how prominent does this have to be?
Okay, well, the consent has to be informed. And so what we had recommended to Cadillac Fairview is that either get consent from individuals in order to capture their images and make use of that information, which could be at the kiosks, or discontinue the use of such information. Cadillac Fairview is no longer doing this. They stopped doing this in 2018 during our investigation. And we have asked them to not recommence unless they were going to do so with opt-in consent. We're disappointed that they haven't committed to that, but they have indicated no plans in the future. That said, when you're talking about consent, what they did argue is, okay, well, we had noted in our privacy policy that we would use information for research and demographic purposes. But that was 2,300 words into a 5,000 word privacy policy. And plus, how many people would decide to go and look at the privacy policy before they go shopping? And
Brent, I always read those before I go down to the Orange Julius.
Right. And I would also say that, on those stickers that you talked about, it said that, there was an opportunity to ask privacy policies available upon request. Well, we tested that. And in the Eaton Center, we sent individuals, investigators, to talk with the information kiosk individuals and to ask for a privacy policy. And they were confused by that, indicated that they didn't have one. And it was only upon us going back that they printed off one for us. And it actually was the privacy statement rather than the privacy policy. So all to say, consent has to be informed. And Canadians want and deserve to know what you're going to do with that information. Certainly, when they're going in their shopping experience, the last thing that they're going to expect is that their biometric information would be captured for these other uses without their consent. And so that's one of the things that we'd expect going forward.
I don't say this often, Brent, but I feel like my tax dollars are well spent with your with your department. Brent, I want to thank you so much for joining us and walking us through this.
Oh, my pleasure.
That was Brent Hahman. He's the Deputy Privacy Commissioner of Canada. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, space time. Humans have been on the International Space Station for over 20 years. We're going to be talking with our good friend Peter Vogel all about that and what the future holds. Back after this. You are back with Get Connected. Mike Agerbo here with John Biehler. We've got a really cool segment now, and I think it's cool because I love space, anything to do with space. And we're going to be talking about the International Space Station and 20 years of manned presence on the International Space Station. Well, when we have any science stories or space stories, we always go to our space expert. His name is Peter Vogel. He is a science and space expert, a former science teacher as well here in Vancouver, British Columbia. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
Very welcome.
So where do we even begin here? The International Space Station, how long has it been around?
Well, the vision for it actually started at the end of the Apollo years, but it was the Russians, or the Soviets as they were at that time, who led the way with their Mir lab. But eventually the Americans came around to joining with the then Russians after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And in '98, they launched the first segment to the backbone, as it were, which was a Russian component. And then by the year 2000, they were ready for continuous manned habitation. And it's that we're celebrating this week.
20 years. To give our listeners an idea of the scope here, like how big is this thing?
Well, it's so big that it's hard to miss if it crosses your night sky and sunlight is reflecting off it. Even though the sun is set for you, it's bouncing off this massive football field sized craft. Most of that size is solar panels, and they do a great job of reflecting light back down to Earth. And so it's very easy to see.
And the solar panels, you said they're about the size of a football field. Is that essentially what's generating all the power? Is there any other power sources in there?
That's it. That's their primary power source. That's their only power source, 90 kilowatts roughly. And most of it's running at 28 volts. That's sort of their equivalent of our 110 volts home electrical supply.
And how often does it go around the Earth in a day?
It's reliable. You can predict exactly where it will be at any given moment. That's Newtonian physics for you. And it's about 95 minutes. So 16 orbits roughly a day, 16 sunrises, 16 sunsets. That's an astronaut's day.
That's interesting. I wonder how that affects the astronauts up there. That'd be kind of crazy on the brain after a while, going through 16 circles of the Earth every day.
Sure, and that's just the least of it, right? And it's that man has learned to adapt to, starting from Yuri Gagarin's couple of orbits around the Earth way back at the beginning of the 60s, the dawn of the space age, as it were, to here we've got people that are up almost 400 days and living in an environment that man wasn't initially developed for.
No, because if things go wrong up there, they can go wrong fast, I imagine.
Yes, that said, of course, the space program is extremely well prepared. It's an extremely expensive venture to put man in space. And pretty much all eventualities are prepared for, shall we say, including taking evasive action if a piece of space junk comes along.
There's been some famous Canadians on board as well. I mean, this is an international space station. Who are some of them that come to mind?
Yes, the Canadian component was there from the start. We've got Marc Garneau, who was Canada's first astronaut. He's been to the space station. He's currently our Minister of Transport in the federal government. Our Governor General, Julie Payette, has been to the space station. And perhaps most famous of all, probably arguably the most famous astronaut of the last decade, is Canadian Chris Hadfield. And he was commander of the space station, known for all kinds of interesting things that he did, including playing guitar, playing David Bowie's Space Oddity, and later making recordings with Canadian bands.
I had the good fortune of getting to meet him and got to nerd out quite a bit with him about photography and the camera systems that he used on the space station as well.
Yeah, I know. He's been an inspiration, I think, to a lot of young Canadians, especially in science and those who dream of going to space.
Yes, he has.
We are going to have to take a break, and we'll get into the last bit of our show. But if you want to hear the extended version of our interview right now with our good friend Peter Vogel about the International Space Station, there's so much more we're going to talk about, the different types of crew up there, the different computers that they're using as well. Go to our website. We've got the extended audio and video podcast up there. When we come back, more Tech to Talk here on Get Connected. Stay tuned. I shouldn't have hit, okay. Well, we're continuing our segment on the International Space Station. We've got Peter Vogel here on the line with us. Peter, we talked about some of the famous Canadians up there. How many people at any one time do they typically have on the station?
Right. The station is designed for 6. It's continuously manned with 6, but it has had as many as 13. You don't really worry about rooms because when you sleep, you're just Velcroed to a wall.
That's kind of weird. Like, I wonder how easy or difficult it is to sleep in zero gravity, Velcroed to a wall.
Because there's no up or down, I imagine it's comfortable.
We'll Velcro you to a wall later and see.
Well, I don't
just duct tape it with your red-green shirt on.
Yeah.
So typically they get up there on rockets in capsules. Is that correct?
That's correct. And up until Elon Musk came along, the Americans had lost the ability to launch people to the space station and had to pay roughly $30 million a pop to the Russians for the privilege of doing that. Elon Musk has shown that SpaceX, their Dragon craft, is capable of that. So they've completed 1 launch, 1 return. And going forward, it looks like that will be one of the primary vehicles for that. It looks like NASA has struck a deal with Tom Cruise to film a movie aboard the space station, I believe in October. And SpaceX is involved in that. They will launch Cruise and his director. And
they're sending Tom Cruise to space?
This is true. As you know, Tom does his own stunts, and this is the preeminent stunt.
There's some other people that I think I'd want to send to space and not come back, but wow, that's cool. Did you get when you were researching this, you said the Russians charged the Americans $30 million a pop to send an astronaut up there. Has SpaceX been able to reduce that cost dramatically?
We don't know. Those numbers haven't been published, I don't believe, but I believe that's the whole thrust of the SpaceX program. And any money that they do make off it, they're throwing at Elon Musk's long-term venture, which is to get to Mars. That's Starlink is the primary vehicle for that. All of that's the prime motivator.
So something else that we want to talk about, obviously, is more of the technology on the space station. Some of the cameras actually have a Vancouver connection. EarthCast?
Yes, EarthCast. They developed 2 or 3 cameras, which were specially installed by the Russians on the outside of the space station. Gorgeous feed, 24 hours a day, essentially, of high-def feed. Spectacular to show in a classroom. You got to see the 16 sunrises and sunsets, as it were. The company is in a bit of financial difficulty at the moment. The first generation of the cameras have suffered cosmic ray damage, I believe. So I'm not sure where that's going. There are currently some high-def cameras there, but they're not as spectacular in my mind as the EarthCast gear.
It's interesting how hostile it is up there. We had a segment we did on satellites. I think it was last week. Intel has come up with a new chip in artificial intelligence for this new generation of satellites. And they were telling us most of the processors on satellites are 20 years old. just because they've been tested and tried and can withstand the rigors of space. So whenever you're putting this new technology up there, it's difficult.
Yes, it is. It's really unproven territory, but the 20 years of work on the space station has helped bridge a lot of these technical gaps.
So what kind of computers are they using up there?
Well, this was interesting to read. I certainly knew that they had laptops there because I've had my photo actually displayed on a laptop on the space station, courtesy of a payload specialist in Utah. He gave a 10-minute window for this through Twitter one day.
That's awesome.
So I learned from that standard laptops are used there. But what really blew me away is that it's around 100 laptops, mostly ThinkPad from Lenovo and from HP. And that they pretty much had every Windows operating system from Windows 95 on. But the primary backbone, about 5 years ago, they switched to Debian Linux. They'd had enough of Windows blue screens, I think.
They get blue screens in space as well, eh?
They hate Microsoft
Yeah.
Teams.
They hate, yeah. So another interesting thing here, what about the heat coming off the laptops? Where does that
Right.
go?
Right. So this is an illustration of how things behave differently in microgravity, or zero gravity, if you will. And that is that heat doesn't rise. Flames don't burn the way we expect they do here on Earth. And so to get the heat out of the laptop, it's not going to rise out of it. It has to be forced out of it. So special fans were required.
What about the internet? How do they get the internet on the space station?
Right. Initially, they didn't have internet there. It was just their internal NASA network, and it was fed through a series of ground stations all across the world, places like Africa, Australia, Europe, and so forth. But as the internet has become a mainstay for us, so it has on the space station. And they've been able to upgrade that to about 600 megabit service up and down.
That's not bad.
Not bad at all. It's almost as good as we're getting in the street here.
Let's talk about the overall cost of keeping this going.
Difficult to know for sure. The American space budget is enormous, although the incumbent or current president wanted to cut that some. But in ballpark terms, I think we're talking around $5 to $7 million a day per man is the effective cost.
That's a lot of money. John, you have a story about the space station.
And it's kind of related to the cost. I worked with a company called Made in Space. They put the first 3D printer in space.
Yes.
And so, really long story short, we were trying to work on putting some art in space. We were also looking to partner with a game company that makes a very popular children's game that involves mining and crafting. And we were going to 3D print these game pieces. And it's something that kids ideally would design in Minecraft, which is basically a 3D modeling tool, if you think about it that way. And an interesting stat that I found is whenever you want to have anything 3D printed in space, I mean, we'll talk about the fact there's a 3D printer on the space station in a second, but it's about $50,000 an hour for an astronaut's time to like literally press a button.
$50,000 an hour.
Yeah.
I don't make that much money.
No,
but I would do it.
But
if I had to push that button in space, I would do it.
But the interesting thing though was with the 3D printer, they Made in Space created a special 3D printer that could withstand being in zero gravity or microgravity at least. And they did a bunch of tests on the Vomit Comet. So they took printers to see how they would react in a simulated zero gravity environment. And then they actually put a couple, I think they've got 2 up there now. And they're commercially printing stuff. But the original intent was the big problem, and Peter, I'm sure you can corroborate this is if they needed a tool or a part, they can't just go down to the Home Depot in space.
No,
they have to put it
not
on
yet.
A rocket and send it up. And the sort of the thought process behind this company Made in Space was that, well, they could just print whatever parts they needed. So the only real consumable they would need would be the filament or the raw material. And so, I mean, it's a great idea. And so they actually started designing tools that could be 3D printed that have like torque wrenches and things like that. And they were actually freely available. I actually used to 3D print all kinds of these NASA wrenches that were designed by literally a rocket scientist, and a NASA engineer. And the idea is that these could be printed in space and would be more useful for them to have this, malleable material that could be turned into anything they needed, as opposed to having to have like a workshop full of tools they might need or parts they might need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Peter, I got a crazy weird question. What do they do with all the garbage and things like human waste?
Well, most of the human waste is actually recycled. Certainly the water component, nearly all the water on the space station is recycled. But just like we have garbage pickup here, they have garbage craft that depart. So a supply craft will come and it's emptied, and then it becomes a garbage craft. And occasionally you see both one arriving and another one departing. And I've had the fortune to see that with the eye, both the space station and an arriving supply craft from one end and a departing garbage craft on the other side. Quite spectacular to see three objects moving at 28,000 kilometers an hour.
That's the thing that I always find fascinating, is when you think about how fast those things are moving and we're just looking up at them.
I know. I watched Interstellar, and it's very hard to dock. Christopher Nolan has shown how hard it is to dock with fast moving objects.
Yeah.
Where do you think the future is going here, Peter? Like, we're talking about moon bases, and Elon Musk is shooting for Mars. Like, how far away are we from those?
I can't answer exactly how far away we are, but we do know that the original intent of the space station was to be a base for missions subsequently to the moon. Now, that didn't happen, and as we know, man hasn't gone back to the moon since 1973, a real missed opportunity. And it's really taken the vision of the likes of Musk to drive governments to get back to the moon, although Musk has no particular interest in the moon. It's Mars or nothing for him. And he's really shown that private enterprise, commercial enterprise, is really key here. They've driven the costs down dramatically from what government was incurring.
We've been talking with Peter Vogel all about the International Space Station. They're celebrating 20 years of, manned missions on the station. And I'm excited to see what happens if I'm still alive 20 years from now. Peter, thanks so much for joining us.
Very welcome. Thank you.
You're back with Get Connected. Don't forget to hit our contest. Again, we're giving away a Google Pixel 4 XL. This is an amazing phone. The Pixel phones are really well known for their cameras.
Absolutely. The night mode especially. And this is a native Google Android device, so you get the updates before anybody else does.
All you have to do is hit our website at getconnectedmedia.com. If you go to the newsletter tab, subscribe, you were entered to win in this contest and all the contests that we have going on this year. And we're giving away thousands of dollars in prizes. So I encourage you to do it. And on the flip side, you get a great weekly newsletter with all our audio and video podcasts and the latest how-to videos, tips and tricks, and info on upcoming contests as well.
And we don't spam you. Other than that newsletter, we're not going to sell your stuff to anybody. We're not going to charge you for this. We get a lot of people emailing, does this cost anything? Like, no, it's free. We're giving it to you for free. You just need to subscribe. But
if you want to give us money,
we'll take your money. But yeah, if you follow a link that's asking for money, that's not from us.
No. Don't forget to listen to our sister show, The App Show. Typically that's on the following day on Sundays in a lot of the Chorus stations. And In Toronto, it's right after this program. So keep listening. I want to thank everyone that helps put the show together. Christina, John, Stephen, and the rest of the gang. See you again next time.